What's going on, guys? This is Ryan with RK Outpost, and Sam Witwer, voice of Galen Merrick in Star Wars The Force Unleashed, one of the best-selling Star Wars video games of all time, and also, maybe more notably, the voice of Darth Maul in the Clone Wars and in Rebels, recently gave an interview on IO9. And by recently, I mean this article came out, looks like 2 hours ago, on Gizmodo with this interview. And he said a couple things. Now, this headline is what really caught my eye. Sam Witwer on Clone Wars game-changing finale. Of course, the finale of which we already know the outcome of because it's written down in the Ahsoka book. You know what's going to happen already, so I don't know how game-changing it could really be. And on saying goodbye to George Lucas's Star Wars. And that's basically what I wanted to focus on, is what he says about George Lucas and George Lucas's Clone Wars. So we will get into that. Now, Sam Witwer has said a couple things recently on a podcast that was broadcast on YouTube. So we will get into and show a couple clips of that as well. Clone Wars is back, giving us a chance to catch up with a delightful moment in Star Wars history, straddling the two different eras of the saga before and after George Lucas. But according to one returning veteran, Darth Maul actor Sam Witwer, the chance to end Lucas's Star Wars stories properly will have some huge ramifications for fans going forward. And he talks about a lot of his experience at Lucasfilm and all of that, and I think that's cool. He's talking about how Dave Filoni has really changed now that he got to work on Mandalorian. He has some more tricks up his sleeve, and he thinks he was able to do things better and bring more to the table doing this season of the Clone Wars than he was before. As to what to expect from the big finale, Witwer officially raised the hype bar to new levels. The finale, that script, was the best Clone Wars script that I have ever read. I think Dave has done a really very, very cool thing. When I say script, I don't mean, when I'm talking about finale, I'm talking about the last 4 episodes because it's really meant to be seen as a movie. The Clone Wars arcs that go on for 3 or 4 episodes, they could also be cut together as movies and work as one stories, but this one's really meant to be seen in its entirety. Definitely. And listen, Sam Witwer has always been someone who has been very appreciative of everything Dave Filoni has brought to the table. And for good reason. I mean, he was the voice of Darth Maul. That really made him a huge figure to a lot of people. And then here's the part that I specifically wanted to talk about. But beyond being able to return to Clone Wars with its final season, giving him another chance to expound upon Maul's twisty-turny legacy, Witwer is a Star Wars diehard himself. He sees this as a fitting end to George Lucas's last major contribution to the saga, something he began over 40 years ago. What may be my most favorite thing about this, what we're doing, Clone Wars is the last George Lucas-produced Star Wars. To be able to finish George's story is tremendously meaningful to all of us, so that's a really big deal right there. These are stories straight from George, and we get to execute upon them. And that's kind of the end of an era. Now, I think maybe he said these words very carefully, because these are stories straight from George, and we get to execute upon them. And that's kind of the end of an era. We get to execute upon these stories, not meaning that these stories are directly from George, because that is very true. We know that there have been changes made to this season of the Clone Wars, and I mean, I will say a lot of them do make sense. For instance, in episode 2, we talked about this here on this channel. The Padme nose art that was not on the ship. I think that it made sense for what they put in place because they need to wrap this thing up. They needed to lead us up to Revenge of the Sith. And I even said it makes sense to have a change there just like that. But there's no doubt that there was a change. Then in the very next episode, we had the Decimator droid scene, which really doesn't make any sense why that was removed. However, it was removed. And the biggest problem isn't with those little changes because they don't really mean too much at the end of the day. The problem was with the fact that Disney, and I'll pop it up right here, went ahead and removed those unfinished episodes that we could compare them against. They removed them from YouTube after receiving the criticism of changing them. So they are trying to hide from the criticism in some sort of way. So they are worried about this censorship. Even though to Sam Witwer, who went on this podcast, I'm about to show this clip right here, thinks that fans are just giving in their anger. They're just looking for something that's not there.
So, you know, it's an interesting thing, especially with the new Clone Wars, and there had been story reels that were released for the Bad Batch, and that's changed, you know, since then. And it's interesting to see how some fans, they're turning to the dark side because they're sniffing out they're finding conspiracies where there are none, where it's literally, for example, this whole thing about Padme nose art on a gunship. That scene does not build off the new scene with Padme and Anakin. And the Padme and Anakin scene does not build off the nose art scene. So it's funny to me, though, that the fans, their own, some of them, not obviously not all of them, Star Wars fans are very sweet, but there are people whose their own anger.
Agendas.
They're whatever is going on in their life is being channeled hardcore into these things. And they're seeing conspiracies and censorship where there just isn't any. It's just the filmmaking process. Rather than, that's the way it was and they're changing the intent. Be like, dude, it's not the intent until it comes out.
Right.
And if you don't understand that these two moments undercut each other, maybe that's why you have a different job and Dave has that job. Maybe
you say that fans are just seeing censorship everywhere. No, it actually happened. Now, whether or not you think it's a big deal that a couple scenes were changed in the first couple episodes, and not to mention the 5th episode, we have the fact that you changed the love interest of Ahsoka into 2 females. We don't know where that story is going to lead yet. Who knows what that will end up doing? But the fact is those changes are happening. That's different from what George Lucas's stories originally were. That's fine if that's what you're going to do. Don't pretend like it's George Lucas's work then. But if that's the case and you're really fine with it, as Disney, why are you then going and blocking these videos that have been up for years and years and years of your unfinished episodes? It's to avoid criticism. So don't tell fans that they're just seeing things they don't want to see because they're angry. That's clearly not the case. If you have a problem, then if you have a problem with those scenes, I get it. But there's no doubt that Disney did not want that criticism, or else why would they go out and block all those just a couple days after receiving criticism when they've been up literally for years? And the reason that I think this is important is because we know for a fact that this is not George's true story, because George did not want Ahsoka to live through Order 66, did not want her to continue on. We know that. Dave Filoni himself has even told us that.
I don't think it's a mystery that I've always been a bit more in the Ahsoka lives camp. And George has been very full on in the Ahsoka dies camp. I think I've said that before, if not revelation for you.
So knowing that, and knowing that we already have Ahsoka living through Order 66, carrying on in Rebels, now we know that she's going to be in The Mandalorian, which brings up so many things. Ahsoka living, because Dave Filoni wants her to live, brings up so many problems. How would Ahsoka, who is part of building the Rebel Alliance now in Disney Star Wars canon, how would she not talk to Luke Skywalker, the person with the same name as her mentor and who she knew became Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker? There's no possible way that they don't interact. It doesn't make any sense. That is why Ahsoka is supposed to die. And they keep bringing her back and putting her in all these projects, and it doesn't make any sense. Do I think Rosario Dawson is a great casting for Ahsoka? I do, but I don't think she should be in The Mandalorian. She should not be there unless she's working with Luke Skywalker. And if that's the case, how have we not seen anything about that in Disney Star Wars? Makes zero sense. But I did want to address what Sam Witwer said and the idea that this is some fulfillment of George Lucas's true story. We know that that's just not the case, and I wish people would stop saying it. But maybe this is just me. Maybe I'm the only one that really has a problem with it. Maybe I'm the only one that doesn't think this season of the Clone Wars really lines up with George Lucas's story. Because like I said, we know that George always wanted Ahsoka to die, and we know that Ahsoka does not die. So that doesn't really make any sense. Once George was out of the picture and Dave Filoni got full creative control of the show, we know what happened, and we know we got Star Wars Rebels where hashtag Ahsoka lives, even though George didn't want it to happen. But let me know what you guys think about this, about Sam Witwer's thoughts upon the end of George Lucas's story, and whether you think that's realistic or not, whether you think Sam Witwer was right or wrong, maybe a little in between with what he said when he was talking to Star Wars Theory. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching, everyone, and a huge shout out to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram? Check out the description below. You'll find links to my P.O. box and my Patreon as well. And I'll talk to you guys later.